There's an invisible line being drawn right now between two groups of people. Those who are building skills, knowledge, and value, and those who are hoping things stay the same. One group owns the future. The other group gets to watch it happen. And here's what most people don't realize until it's too late: you don't get to choose whether this line exists. You only get to choose which side you're on. I've watched this happen for decades now. I've seen people with enormous potential just fade into the background of their own lives. Not because they weren't smart enough or capable enough, but because they made a decision without realizing they were making it. They decided that today was good enough, that their current level of knowledge was sufficient, that their existing skills would carry them through. And you know what happened? Life moved on without them. Here's the truth about comfort. It's not neutral. When you choose comfort, you're not choosing to stay where you are. You're choosing to fall behind. Because while you're comfortable, the world is changing. Technology is advancing. Markets are shifting. New ideas are spreading. Younger people are learning faster. And the gap between where you are and where you need to be, it's growing wider every single day. Let me tell you something I learned years ago. I was working this job, nothing special, but it was comfortable. I knew exactly what to do every day. No surprises, no challenges, no stress. And I remember thinking to myself, this is nice. I've got it figured out. But there was this other opportunity that kept presenting itself. Something different. Something that would require me to learn new things, meet new people, step into uncomfortable territory. And every time it came up, I had a reason to say no. The timing wasn't right. I wasn't ready. Maybe later. Well, later came. And you know what I found? That comfortable job that felt so secure? It disappeared. The industry changed. The company restructured. And suddenly, all that comfort I'd been enjoying became the very thing that left me unprepared. Meanwhile, the people who took those uncomfortable opportunities, they were thriving. They'd been building skills, expanding their networks, growing their value. They saw the changes coming because they were part of creating them. And me, I was scrambling to catch up. That's when it hit me. Comfort is expensive. It costs you your edge. It costs you your adaptability. It costs you your future. And the price? You don't pay it today. You pay it years down the road when the world has moved on and you're still standing in the same spot wondering what happened. Look around you right now. Look at what's happening in the world. Industries that existed for 100 years are gone. Skills that were valuable 10 years ago are worthless today. Jobs that seemed secure are vanishing. And new opportunities? They're going to the people who prepared for them. The people who saw the changes coming because they were paying attention. The people who invested in themselves when everyone else was investing in comfort. Here's what I want you to understand. The world doesn't care about your comfort zone. It doesn't slow down because you're not ready. It doesn't wait because you need more time. It just keeps moving. And every day you choose comfort over growth. Every day you choose familiar over better. Every day you choose easy over excellent. You're making a choice about your future. You're deciding which side of that invisible line you're going to be on. You see, most people operate on this assumption that life is going to stay roughly the same. They think, well, what worked yesterday will work tomorrow. What got me here will get me there. But that's not how life works anymore. Maybe it used to. Maybe there was a time when you could learn a skill, get a job, and ride that wave for 40 years. But that time is gone. The wave doesn't last 40 years anymore. Sometimes it doesn't even last 4. And the people who are thriving right now, they're not smarter than you. They're not more talented than you. They're not luckier than you. They just made a different choice. They chose growth over comfort. They chose learning over knowing. They chose becoming over being. And that choice, repeated daily, compounds into a completely different life. Think about it. What did you learn last month? What new skill did you develop? What book did you read? What uncomfortable situation did you put yourself in that forced you to grow? If the answer is nothing, then you've made a choice. You've chosen to stay the same. And staying the same in a changing world means falling behind. Here's the thing about growth that nobody tells you. It's not comfortable. It's not supposed to be. Growth happens at the edge of your abilities, not in the center of your comfort. It happens when you're stretching, straining, struggling. It happens when you're reading things that challenge your thinking, meeting people who are ahead of you, attempting things you're not sure you can do. That's where growth lives. And that's exactly where most people refuse to go. They say, I'll do it when I feel ready. I'll start when I have more time. I'll take that risk when I'm more prepared. But ready never comes. Time never appears. Preparation never feels sufficient. And meanwhile, life is happening. Opportunities are passing. The invisible line is being drawn. And they're on the wrong side of it. I've learned something profound over the years. You don't feel yourself falling behind. That's what makes it so dangerous. When you're in your comfort zone, everything feels fine. You're not in pain, you're not stressed, you're just existing. Going through the motions, doing what you've always done. And it feels okay. But okay is the enemy of extraordinary. Okay is the trap that keeps you stuck while the world moves forward. You see, life rewards action and punishes hesitation. It rewards learning and punishes complacency. It rewards courage and punishes comfort seeking. And the reward or punishment doesn't always come immediately. Sometimes it takes years to see the consequences of the choices you're making today. But they're coming. Trust me, they're coming. The person who's reading every day, they're building a knowledge advantage that compounds over time. The person who's networking, meeting new people, expanding their circle, they're building an opportunity advantage. The person who's developing new skills, taking courses, practicing their craft, they're building a value advantage. And all those advantages, they add up, they compound. They create a completely different trajectory. And here's what breaks my heart. Most people have the capacity for so much more than they're experiencing. They have potential they'll never tap into, dreams they'll never pursue, abilities they'll never develop. Not because they can't, but because they won't. Because choosing growth requires making a decision that's uncomfortable right now for a benefit that comes later. And most people choose comfort right now at the expense of everything that comes later. So let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Are you growing? Not yesterday. Not last year. Right now. Today. This week. Are you learning something new? Developing a new skill? Reading something that expands your thinking? Having conversations that challenge your assumptions? Taking action on something that scares you a little bit? Because if you're not, you're falling behind. The invisible line is being drawn, and you're on the wrong side. Now, let's talk about what it actually costs you when you choose to stay the same. Because most people think the cost of not growing is just missing out on some opportunities. But it's so much deeper than that. The real cost is invisible. It's paid in ways you don't see until years down the road when it's too late to do anything about it. I remember someone I knew years ago. Smart person. Talented. Full of potential. But every time an opportunity came to step up, to take on something bigger, to stretch into a new role, they had the same response. I'm good where I am. I don't need all that extra stress. I've got a good thing going. And you know what? They did have a good thing going. For a while. But here's what they didn't see coming. While they were staying comfortable in their position, the world around them was changing. New people were coming into the company with skills they didn't have. Technology was advancing in ways that made their old methods obsolete. The market was shifting, and the company needed different things from its people. And slowly, without them even noticing, they went from being valuable to being replaceable, from being seen as someone with potential to being seen as someone who plateaued. And when the changes came, and they always come, they weren't prepared. They didn't have the skills, they didn't have the network. They didn't have the adaptability. All they had was experience doing something that didn't matter anymore. That's the first cost of not growing. You become irrelevant. Not overnight. Not dramatically. Just slowly, quietly, steadily. The world moves on, and you become a relic of an earlier time. And the worst part? You don't feel it happening. You feel like you're doing fine. You're doing the same things you've always done, getting the same results you've always gotten. But those results matter less and less in the new world that's forming around you. Here's the second cost, and this one's even more painful. You lose respect for yourself. Now, you might not admit this. You might not even consciously recognize it. But deep down, you know. You know when you're not living up to your potential. You know when you're playing small. You know when you're choosing comfort over courage. And every time you make that choice, every time you take the easy path, every time you avoid the thing that would make you grow, you lose a little bit of respect for yourself. And that compounds. It builds up over time, until one day you look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person looking back at you. Because it's not the person you thought you'd become. It's not the person you were capable of becoming. It's just the person who chose comfort too many times. And that knowledge sits with you. It weighs on you. It becomes a quiet regret that follows you around, whispering about what could have been if only you'd been willing to be uncomfortable for a while. The third cost is relationships. You see, when you stop growing, you start losing connection with the people who are growing. It's not that they reject you. It's not that they look down on you. It's just that you don't have anything in common anymore. They're talking about new ideas, new projects, new challenges. They're excited about what they're learning, what they're building, where they're going, and where you're talking about the same things you were talking about 5 years ago. The same complaints, the same stories, the same limited perspective, and slowly those relationships fade, not because anyone wanted them to, just because growth creates distance from non-growth. The people who are evolving naturally gravitate toward other people who are evolving, and the people who are staying the same gravitate toward other people who are staying the same. You end up in an echo chamber of mediocrity, where everyone's comfortable, everyone's got excuses, and nobody's really going anywhere. And the opportunities that come from being around growth-oriented people? They pass you by. Here's the fourth cost, and this is the one that really hurts. You lose opportunities you don't even know about. See, the best opportunities don't come from job boards or advertisements. They come from people who know you, trust you, and think of you when something good comes along. But here's the thing, they only think of you if you're the kind of person who's growing, learning, bringing value. If you're stagnant, if you're stuck, if you're the same person you were 5 years ago, you don't come to mind when opportunities arise. People don't think, oh, I should tell them about this. They think they're probably not interested. They're comfortable where they are. So the opportunities go to someone else. The promotion goes to someone else. The partnership goes to someone else. The introduction goes to someone else. And you never even know what you missed because nobody tells you about opportunities you're not ready for. They just quietly go to people who are ready, people who've been preparing, people who've been growing. Let me tell you something about the way life works. It's like a garden. If you plant seeds, water them, tend to them, you get a harvest. But if you don't plant anything, if you don't do the work, you don't just get nothing, you get weeds. The absence of intentional growth doesn't leave you neutral. It leaves you with problems, weeds of regret, weeds of missed opportunities, weeds of diminished capacity. The garden doesn't stay empty. It fills up with whatever grows when you're not paying attention. That's what happens in your life when you stop growing. You don't just stay the same. You actually decline. Your skills rust. Your network shrinks. Your thinking becomes rigid. Your confidence erodes. Because deep down you know you're capable of more, and every day you don't pursue more, you feel that gap, that distance between who you are and who you could be. And that distance becomes painful. Now here's what really gets me. Most people know this. Deep down they know they should be growing. They know they should be learning, developing, pushing themselves. But they've got this story they tell themselves. I'm too old to start something new. I'm too busy with responsibilities. I don't have the resources. I'll start when things settle down. And these stories become shields against the discomfort of growth. They become excuses for staying small. But let me tell you what those stories really are. They're not reasons. They're rationalizations. They're ways to feel okay about not doing what you know you should be doing. And every time you repeat those stories to yourself, you're making a choice. You're choosing the temporary comfort of the excuse over the long-term benefit of the growth. And that choice has a price. The price is a life of wondering, what if? What if I'd learned that skill? What if I'd taken that risk? What if I'd invested in myself? What if I'd been willing to be uncomfortable for a while? Those questions haunt people in their later years, not the things they tried and failed at, the things they never tried at all because they were too comfortable to start. You see, failure is temporary. You try something, it doesn't work, you learn, you move on. But regret is permanent. It sits with you. It grows with. It becomes part of your story. And the regret of not growing, not trying, not becoming who you were capable of becoming, that's the heaviest regret of all. Here's something else you lose when you don't grow. You lose the ability to handle change. Life is going to change, your industry is going to change, technology is going to change, the economy is going to change. And when those changes come, The people who've been growing, learning, adapting, they handle it. They might not like it, but they handle it. Because they've built the muscle of learning. They've practiced being uncomfortable. They've developed the skill of figuring things out. But the people who've been comfortable, they break. The change that was inevitable becomes catastrophic because they're not prepared for it. They spent years avoiding discomfort, and now discomfort is unavoidable. They spent years avoiding learning, and now learning is required. They spent years staying the same, and now change is mandatory. And they don't have the tools to deal with it. So when I talk about the cost of staying small, I'm not talking about missing out on a bigger house or a fancier title. I'm talking about missing out on who you were meant to become. I'm talking about the slow erosion of your potential, the quiet dimming of your light, the gradual shrinking of your life. That's the real cost. And it's paid not in one big painful moment, but in 1,000 small compromises spread out over years. So now you're probably asking, all right, I get it. I need to grow, but how? What does that actually look like in real life? And that's the right question. Because understanding the problem is one thing. Knowing what to do about it is something else entirely. Let me start with something simple but profound. If you want your life to change, you have to change. Not your circumstances. Not your luck. Not what's happening around you. You. And change starts with what you do every single day. Not what you do occasionally. Not what you do when you feel motivated. What you do every day, whether you feel like it or not. Here's the first discipline, and it's the foundation for everything else. You've got to become a learner, not a knower. A learner, there's a big difference. A knower thinks they've figured it out. A learner knows there's always more to discover. A knower defends their current level of understanding. A learner questions it. A knower feels threatened by new information. A learner gets excited by it. And the fastest way to become a learner? Read. Read books. Not social media posts. Not headlines. Books. Real, substantial books written by people who've spent years thinking deeply about important subjects. You know what a book is? It's someone's lifetime of learning compressed into a few hours of your time. That's an incredible advantage. That's leverage. But most people don't use it. I'll be honest with you. When I started taking reading seriously, everything changed. Not all at once, but steadily, consistently. I started reading about philosophy and it changed how I thought. I started reading about business and it changed how I worked. I started reading about psychology and it changed how I understood people. And all that learning, it compounded. It built on itself. One idea connected to another. One principle reinforced another. And slowly my thinking became richer, deeper, more nuanced. But here's what most people do. They say, I don't have time to read. And you know what? They're right. They don't have time because they've filled their time with things that don't matter. Scrolling, watching, distracting themselves. But they've got time for that. Interesting, isn't it? They don't have 30 minutes a day to invest in their growth, but they've got 2 hours to spend on entertainment that adds nothing to their life. Let me tell you something about time. You don't find time. You make time. You make time for what matters. And if your growth doesn't matter enough to make time for it, then you've already decided which side of that invisible line you're going to be on. Now, here's the second discipline. You've got to get around better people. Not just nice people. Not just people you're comfortable with. Better people. People who are ahead of you. People who challenge you. People who make you feel a little bit inadequate because they're operating at a level you haven't reached yet. You know what happens when you're around people like that? You rise. Not because they're teaching you directly, not because they're giving you instructions, but because standards are contagious. Excellence is contagious. When you're around people who read, you start reading. When you're around people who take their health seriously, you start taking your health seriously. When you're around people who have high standards for their work, you start raising your standards. But most people do the opposite. They hang around people who make them feel smart by comparison. People who validate their excuses. People who are just as stuck as they are. And they call that friendship. But it's not friendship. It's mutual limitation. It's a conspiracy to stay small together. I'm not saying abandon your old friends. I'm saying be intentional about who you spend your time with. Because you're going to become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's not a theory. That's a fact. Their attitudes become your attitudes. Their habits become your habits. Their standards become your standards. So if you want to level up, you need to spend time with people who are already there. Here's the third discipline. And this one's uncomfortable. You've got to increase your value. Not your price. Your value. There's a difference. Your price is what you're currently getting paid. Your value is what you're actually worth to the marketplace. And if you want to earn more, achieve more, have more opportunities, you've got to become more valuable. And how do you become more valuable? You develop skills that people need. You become someone who solves problems. You become someone who communicates clearly, thinks critically, leads effectively. You become someone who gets results. Not someone who just shows up. Not someone who just tries hard. Someone who actually delivers. Let me tell you something I learned the hard way. The marketplace doesn't care about your effort. It doesn't care about your intentions. It cares about results. It cares about value. And if you're not creating value, you're not going to get rewards. It's that simple. So what skills do you need to develop? Well, that depends on where you want to go. But here are some universal ones. Learn to communicate. Learn to write clearly, speak persuasively, present confidently. Learn to think, not just memorize. Think, analyze, question, connect ideas. Learn to lead. Even if you don't have a title, learn to influence people, inspire people, organize people toward a common goal. Learn about money, how it works, how to earn it, how to manage it, how to make it grow. These skills? They're available to anyone willing to learn them. They're not secrets. They're not locked away. There are books about all of them, courses about all of them, people who've mastered them who will teach them to you. The only barrier is your willingness to do the work. Now, here's the fourth discipline. You've got to take care of yourself, your health, your energy, your mental clarity, because none of this other stuff matters if you're running on empty. You can't grow if you're exhausted all the time. You can't learn if your mind is foggy. You can't perform if your body is breaking down. And I know this seems basic, but look around. How many people are taking care of themselves? Really taking care of themselves? Most people are running themselves into the ground. Bad food, no exercise, insufficient sleep, high stress, and they wonder why they can't focus, why they can't perform, you can't show up as their best selves. Well, you can't make withdrawals if you're not making deposits. You've got to invest in your physical and mental health if you want to have the energy to grow. Here's the fifth discipline. You've got to set standards for yourself, not goals. Standards. Goals are things you aim for. Standards are things you refuse to fall below. Goals are negotiable. Standards aren't. And the people who are leveling up, they have standards that demand growth. They have standards for what they read, who they spend time with, how they spend their money, how they spend their time, and those standards pull them forward. Most people have no standards. They just react to whatever happens. Someone offers them a donut, they eat it. Someone invites them to waste time, they waste it. Someone offers them an opportunity to complain, they complain. They're just bouncing around, reacting to life instead of creating it. And that's not a path to growth. That's a path to mediocrity. Let me tell you about a change I made years ago. I decided I was going to have a standard about what I consumed mentally. No more junk. No more negative news that I couldn't do anything about. No more gossip. No more toxic conversations. Just valuable input. Books. Conversations with people who were building something. Content that made me think, made me better, made me grow. And you know what happened? My thinking changed. My attitude changed. My results changed. Not because of one big shift, but because of 1,000 small ones that came from maintaining that standard. Here's the thing about these disciplines. None of them are complicated. None of them require special talent or unique circumstances. They're available to anyone, but they do require something most people aren't willing to give: consistency. You've got to do them when you don't feel like it. You've got to do them when they're inconvenient. You've got to do them when nobody's watching, when nobody's applauding, when there's no immediate payoff. Because growth isn't about massive, dramatic changes. It's about small improvements repeated consistently over time. It's about reading for 30 minutes when you'd rather watch something mindless. It's about having a difficult conversation when you'd rather avoid it. It's about showing up to practice your skill when you'd rather stay comfortable. Those small choices, repeated daily, create a completely different trajectory. They compound into a completely different life. Now, let me tell you where most people fail with all of this. It's not that they don't know what to do. It's not that they don't have access to the information. It's not even that they don't try. They fail because they don't make a real commitment. They dabble, they experiment, they try it for a while. And when it gets hard, when it gets uncomfortable, when the initial excitement wears off, they quit, and then they tell themselves a story. It wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right approach. It wasn't for me. But the truth is simpler and harder. They quit because they weren't really committed. They were interested, but they weren't committed. And there's a world of difference between those two things. When you're interested in something, you do it when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you do it no matter what. When you're interested, you let circumstances determine your actions. When you're committed, you make circumstances bend to your will. Interest says, I'll try. Commitment says, I will, or I'll figure out why I can't and fix it. Here's what I want you to understand about personal responsibility. Everything in your life right now is the result of decisions you made in the past. Not circumstances. Decisions. The books you read or didn't read. The relationships you invested in or neglected. The standards you maintained or let slide. The comfort you chose or the growth you pursued. All of it traces back to decisions. And that means everything in your future will be the result of decisions you're making right now. Not what happens to you. What you decide to do about what happens to you. That's where your power is. Not in controlling circumstances, but in controlling your response to circumstances. Most people give away this power. They make their current circumstances responsible for their future outcomes. I can't grow because I'm too busy. I can't learn because I don't have money for courses. I can't change because I have responsibilities. And every one of those statements is a choice to let circumstances win. It's a choice to be a victim of life instead of a creator of life. But the people who level up, they think differently. They don't say, I can't because. They say, how can I even though? They don't let circumstances determine outcomes. They figure out how to create outcomes despite circumstances. And that shift in thinking, that shift from victim to creator, that's where everything changes. Let me talk about the philosophy that guides your life. Most people don't have one. They just have a collection of random beliefs picked up from parents, society, friends, media. They've never really examined whether those beliefs serve them. But your philosophy determines your thinking. Your thinking determines your decisions. Your decisions determine your actions. Your actions determine your results. And your results determine your life. So if you want to change your life, you've got to go all the way back to philosophy. I'll tell you my philosophy, the one that changed everything for me. You can have more than you've got because you can become more than you are. That's it. That's the foundation. If you want more, become more. Don't wish for easier problems, wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenges, wish for more wisdom. Don't wish for different circumstances, wish for better preparation. This philosophy puts everything in your control, not circumstances, not luck, not timing. You, what you're learning, what you're becoming, what you're building. And when you operate from that philosophy, victim thinking becomes impossible. Excuses become irrelevant. Here's something I want to leave with you, and I want you to really think about this. 5 years from now, you're going to arrive. That's certain. The question is where? Are you going to arrive as a more skilled, more knowledgeable, more valuable, more capable version of yourself? Or are you going to arrive as basically the same person you are now, just 5 years older? The invisible line is being drawn. Every single day, it's being drawn. And every day, you choose which side you're on. Not with some grand declaration, with small choices. What you read, who you talk to, what you practice, what you tolerate, what you pursue. Those choices, repeated daily, determine everything. Your future self is watching the decisions you make right now. And years from now, you're either going to thank yourself or you're going to wish you'd started today. The choice is yours, but the consequences aren't optional. They're coming either way. 5 years of growth or 5 years of standing still. Both arrive right on schedule. The only question is which one you're building.